we go. We got the backdraft music in the background. Welcome to the V-Shifter Podcast. It's Josh Bloom, Chris Stewart, John Vance, and we are still at FRI, although when you're listening to this, FRI is over. We're gone from Orlando, but we're here on the last day, and since we were together, we wanted to record another podcast. We're up early and talking about stuff, so we will be talking today about incident action plans and really, why is that so important? So we'll dig into that topic in just a little bit. We still want to remind you about the 2025 Blue Card Hazard Zone Conference coming to Sharonville, Ohio, September 29th through October 3rd. You can go to vshifter.com and find all the information about that. You can meet the instructors, see the class descriptions, the schedule of what's going on is on there right now. As soon as you sign up, we'll send you our app so you can start planning out your visit and really looking at the classes and giving you an agenda for the trip. Do you have anything new on the conference? I know we are full right now with the certification lab, so that pre-conference workshop is full. How is the counts looking, and what else do we have available for folks?
Yeah, so I think there's maybe 10 seats left in all the total in all the workshops, 10 or 12 seats in all the workshops. So if you're looking to jump into one of those, take advantage of a full week of training, whether it's there's only 3 seats in the Mayday workshop, so that I'm sure that might be filled up by the time this airs. Yeah. But either way, the workshops are filling up, so that'll be good. And then our conference numbers still look good. Looking forward to it. People I think we picked up the furthest traveled yesterday from right outside of Seattle area coming to Cincinnati, so that's almost like going halfway around the world, all the way across the country. But
we'll do that conference trick. Who's the farthest away? Hey. Show us your driver's license, and
so
give you a prize.
We're looking forward to it. Looking forward to catching up with everybody. Looking forward to talking about where we've been and where we're going and what's coming, what we have coming out new, and the general session stuff, and then the breakouts at the conference. We got some great sessions going to take place there, so getting an update from Dan, that's going to be nice, being here at FRI and hearing a little bit of the buzz about NARIS and the rollout of that coming in January, right? I mean, I guess it sounds like they're going to flip the switch and turn it all on January, right?
Yeah, they're going through waves right now of logging people in, and I think they said yesterday there's they're in the triple digits of places that are already reporting into the system, so it's going pretty quick. Yeah,
so that's not Dan's, big piece, but he's going to give us a little update on what's going on with that, where it's at, what that rollout looks like. So, a lot of takeaways from the conference. It's not the same old thing like a lot of the places that you go. We try to put out new, what's the latest thing going on, and try to give people tools to take back to their organization. So.
And there really isn't another conference for incident commanders and fire service leaders like this one. This is really about the work where the rubber meets the road. Great for anybody aspiring to be an officer, chief officers, folks who are leaders within their organization, both on the scene and off. So we have a lot of topics for that. The strategic decision-making workshop, I think the material that Chris and Eric put together for that is really good. What can we expect from that workshop, Chris, and tell us about what those 2 days are all about?
I think the simplest way to put it is we're going to focus on not what to think, but how to think, and how to use the strategic decision-making process as your critical thinking platform for the Fireground. And that critical thinking should be done by everybody on the Fireground, from the firefighters to the officers of all levels, right? And when we're actually approaching it from the same perspective, utilizing the same process, we tend to be way better aligned and looking at the actual things that we really need to get done in the most reasonable way. Fastest, most efficient is typically the safest, right? And so when we utilize and practice a system and process regularly, it makes us a lot better. So really what we're going to do is kind of define all of that, talk about it, and then give examples, and then we're going to exercise it, right? And it's very simple, low technology, as Bruno would say, is the low fidelity exercise of utilizing the system and practicing, and it can be done individually at the company level, at the battalion level, at the department level, and it requires literally absolute minimal technology to do. The technology required is what every fire department already possesses. So it's not like we've got anything crazy going on here. So it's how are we going to exercise and use the system better and more efficiently to make better decisions on the Fireground. So
I think with the critical thinking classes, it's exercising the biggest and probably most important tool we have, and that's our brain. Mm-hmm. Right? That's we have to think, and I think as Grant Light says, you can't beat your way through every problem, but sometimes you can bully the fire into submission. But that we call that accidental success, not really thinking about it and doing things the smartest way. So I want to put out there that every workshop that we have at the conference is also available to be delivered on the road in person at organizations or in a region. So we got several Mayday workshops coming up that are full. Washtenaw County, Michigan, Lenexa, Kansas. We're going to Kernersville, right outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Got a big box class, John, in your area in Minnesota still. I think 2 or 3 safety trainers coming up, Los Alamos, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I just wanted to put that out there as all of our workshops are available for delivery regionally, and it doesn't have to be one fire department that fills them. If you have people to fill part of the class, we organize and help fill those seats, with people from all over your region. So
if someone wants to host a workshop, say a big box workshop, because I know we can only do like 5 of those a year based on Shane's availability, how do they do that? How do they go about trying to schedule a workshop for their area?
Yeah, if you're wanting to schedule something for like maybe the fourth quarter of 2025, we have a little bit of availability there, but 2026, I actually just looked this morning, we have like 17 workshops forecasted right now for 2026. We don't have many dates assigned, but organizations that have reached out saying, we want the Mayday workshop, we want the critical thinking workshop, we want the big box workshop. So if you're wanting to do something with that, you can reach out to me. My email, josh@bshifter.com. As everybody that's connected to our system knows, if you call me and I'm not sitting on a podcast talking to somebody else or sitting in front of a class, I'll answer. I'll be on the phone with you, and we'll figure it out. And our mission with that is to be able to deliver the message so that you can do better and understand the program better in your region, right? It's about that. It's about what does it look like in the end, and any way that we can help an organization or a region to deliver the service, that's what we're about. So,
all right, josh@bshifter.com. You can reach out to us and get those booked for 2026 or the end of 2025. So we've been on this series of why it matters, and we talked about strategy a couple weeks ago. We talked about risk management, and today we wanted to talk about incident action planning and why does it matter, especially there being a single incident action plan, because the fire service that I started in, there were several incident action plans because people would just show up and do whatever the captain told us to do. And it really wasn't coordinated by an IC. A lot of times we had an IC there, but the IC didn't really coordinate that. I've ridden along with other metropolitan fire departments where they operate that same way, where the company officers have that under their responsibility for the incident action plan. And when I see that happen, I see a duplication of effort a lot of times, where 2 or 3 companies are doing the same thing, where then something else isn't getting covered, like either a search or checking for extension or whatever else. So that's just my example of it, but let's talk about the incident action plan and why it matters today.
Yeah, so I think to start with the incident action plan, you have to, if you're listening to this, you should go back and listen to the other podcasts that we've done, the last 2 or 3 that came out before this one, to kind of get to this point, though there'll be a lot of takeaways here without it'll just help you connect the dots, I think, if you listen to the other ones. But, the incident action plan I want to put out there right in the beginning, so many people are like, Blue Card's a communications program. Well, we communicate the incident action plan over the radio, but we can't get to the incident action plan unless we've gone through the process and made decisions on the front end of the incident, which is really the topics that we talked about in the previous 2 podcasts about, size up, evaluation, critical fireground factors, deployment. How many people do I really have to go through and fill out these roles? Like, what can I do with what I have? So, and our focus with that always is, fire control and life safety. That we want to fill that out first, and if we can't do that, then we shouldn't be doing any other support work. The primary focus should be, fire control and life safety. So as we think about incident action plan, we want everybody to be on the same page, and I throw this out a lot with the whole, sports thing. If the play is called for, we're gonna on the football field and we're gonna pass, and the wide receiver and the quarterback are not on the same page, we see it several times a year, and it's like, that wasn't an intentional throw. Like, we're not throwing it out of bounds there. We're not throwing it on the field to somewhere where somebody's not. The quarterback thought they were on the same page, and that's where the wide receiver was going, and they're not. So when we talk about that, the Fireground's the same thing. Chris and I may think close to the same, but when we pull up and we have 2 different mind frames of what we're going to do, and I have my incident action plan and he has his, and then John, you get there and you're going to be the strategic IC. Now we have 3 different plans, and when we have a single objective in mind, really that ties 2 things together of fire control and life safety, everybody has to be on the same page, and we have to be working towards that same end goal. It can't be the race. Last week when we were in Orlando at the IAPs conference, we talked to several people from several organizations that currently have that SOP driven response, and they would say, our second engine gets there and pulls a backup line, and he said the problem is the second engine is always trying to beat the first engine, and then the lines get wrapped up, and then we don't get water on the fire, and we don't have to look very far to find out that when we don't get water on the fire, things are not getting better, and it's going to get worse, and we shouldn't be surprised when it gets worse. So that's 2 clearly different incident action plans. And then the other part of that is, if it's not communicated and if it's not communicated and documented, I can't verify that it's going to happen. So I've seen this, all across the country, and I talk to people every week about it. Of, the first truck is supposed to get there, and they're supposed to do this, and we found out that that's not what they did. And in several cases, it was like, the first truck's supposed to go in and search the first floor at a 2-story house, when they have some kind of SOP driven, thing, and none of that is communicated. And it's like, well, they never made it to that point because they chose to do something else, or there was something better that they wanted to do, or whatever it is. And when we're looking at solving the problem and the end goal, it's like, well, there's a whole piece missing there. And then people act surprised when they're like, what do you mean we didn't get an all clear of the building? I mean, we've heard a couple of very recent stories about well, we thought we had an all clear of that. We thought that was searched, but nobody assigned it, nobody verified it, and then it comes back, oh, there, they found somebody in there, 3 days later, and it's like, what? Like, well, how did that happen? Were they like totally buried under something? Were they digging it out, or like what? It's like, oh no, I guess nobody ever made it into the area or whatever. And it's like, no, that's why we have a system, and that's why it's so important with the incident action plan. And I hit several pieces of that, but we'll break it. We'll break kind of all of that down further now, I think.
Yeah. So what work, especially any work in public safety or in dangerous environments or high risk or has consequences, does anyone approach the work without a plan? Right? It'd be insane not to. Or you would just learn to deal with repeated failure, right? So a plan is in the word, incident action plan. And so we have to know and understand, how do we develop that? And then what is the importance and the value of actually having one plan that is managed by whoever the incident commander is, whether it's a fast attacking mobile IC or it's a stationary IC number 2 strategic level incident commander. There has to be a plan, and that plan for us has to be have a standard set of objectives that when we show up on the Fireground, this is the work we are here to complete. Ours is the tactical objectives: fire control or hazard mitigation, life safety and getting an all clear, and loss control and property conservation, right? So if we look at what is the academic description or definition of an incident action plan, is what needs to occur on the Fireground to achieve the tactical objectives. Well, you have to be able to process and measure the problem before you actually put a plan together. Any professional risk manager would tell you the less effective or the lack of understanding of the problem is you have a high likelihood of coming up with a dumb solution or a poor solution. And so our incident action plan is part of a process. It's part of size up and evaluation for critical factors. There's a risk management part that it looks at, and then the strategy. From what position should we be working? All right, well, based on those 3 things, here is my plan. Here's my plan to put the fire out, to get the searchable places searched, and to save the stuff or the things that we can. And so it's important that there is a plan. It gets confused a lot with assumed expectations. Well, I had a plan, and so everybody needs to kind of assume what that plan is based on their evaluation of the conditions. Well, that doesn't work. That's SOP-driven stuff. When an incident commander gets there and shows up, develops their plan, and says, okay, based on this plan, I'm on engine 1, I'm going to do this. Engine 2, I need you to do this. Ladder 1, I need you to do this. Engine 3, I need you to do this. And then we're putting into place people in positions doing the functions that need to happen on the Fireground that now provides some accountability for the work. And I don't mean the accountability in the position and function meaning of that. I mean, now I know where a search is getting done. I know where fire control is getting done. I know where it's not. I know where I need to send other companies, and I'm now ready to receive some feedback about, are they able to do the job or can't they, right? We're going to do that in a standard communication process. So it is part of a bigger system to know and understand. It actually is very simple once you start learning and understanding it, and the confusion becomes we start to use assumed expectations or that or multiple perspectives simultaneously, and since human beings are involved, they will never ever come out perfectly aligned. So it's important to have it as part of your process and know and understand what it is, and that the IC at any given point of the incident should be able to communicate very simply to anybody. Well, here was our plan from the beginning. Here's what we've accomplished. Here's what we need to accomplish.
So IC number 1 gets there. They look at the critical fireground factors. They're going to size up the building. They're going to describe the problem, and then they transmit an incident action plan. And when we talk about thinking company officers, they're going to key the mic and verbalize what needs to get done on the scene from their perspective. How often should that be revised then during the course of the time that they have command before command is transferred?
Yeah, so anytime that there's a change in the problem, a perfect example is the company officer gets there, does the size up +3, goes down what strategy they're going to be in, starts down the path of we're stretching a line to the front door, primary search, fire control. They're doing a 360. They get there and they're like, we got a victim hanging out the window on the 2nd floor. Well, they're maybe still going to do the same thing they were doing, but that's going to change the assignment. But if they get to the Charlie side and we got a basement fire, Well, that's going to change the action, right? So they're going to communicate that. So, during the 360s complete, we got a working fire and a, walkout basement we're redeploying to the Charlie side. Well, what that does is sends everybody the message that what I said originally was accurate, but now I have more information and we actually have something different. And because we go on 90% of what we go on, or 80%, or say whatever the number is at your organization is medical calls. When we get there and they were called us for chest pains, it's like getting called to a structure fire. Well, you get called to a structure fire and people want to take this, we take this same action, we do the same thing every single, well, we got called to a fire, this is what we do. Well, when you get called to chest pains, you don't just do what you do, right? You get there and it's like, oh, you're having chest pains, and goes through questions, and we're going to go through some other diagnostic things, and we're going to put them on a monitor, and we're going to evaluate all that. We don't get there and say, you called us for chest pains and you're going to get shocked today. Like that's what we're going to do. And it's like, well, if it says that's what we need to do based off of going through that algorithm and making decisions, because that's what we're doing on the EMS run, is making decisions based off of information that we're getting from tools, diagnostic tools, what they're telling us, whatever, then that's what we're going to do. Well, on the Fireground, it's the same thing, right? Like you got called to whatever and you sized it up from what I could see at this point, and anytime that you see something that changes the incident action plan, we're going to communicate that. No different than you stretch a line. You said I'm going to stretch a line through the front door. I stretch a line through the front door, and we've had plenty of podcasts with this, 3 or 4, I think now. They stretch through the front door, they see the seed of the fire, but they also find a victim. Well, they communicate that. It changes the incident action plan, right? I mean, maybe they're still going to put water on the fire, or maybe they say, hey, we put some water on the fire, but we're going to remove this victim. We need another company to, replace us. Or they already assigned the second company, and they're going to, because at that point, the question was if IC1 still has it. Well, they're making all the decisions. So what do they need to do? And what do they need other companies to do to solve the problem, to meet those objectives, as Chris said? So it's not working, so let's do it harder thing, right? I mean, and we have this tendency to do that, right? It's like, we're not getting it, let's just push harder. And it's like, well, what you're doing isn't working. And sometimes pushing harder maybe is like, we're gonna get a second line here, but okay, I'm not gonna put a third line there potentially, because it's like, no, you're just pushing harder. What you're doing is, you're not gonna win doing what you're doing, right? It's not working.
I want to back up to Size Up +3, because with Blue Card, we talk about thinking company officers. And I don't know if I can stress this enough. Blue Card is not a script. Yeah. We hear that. We heard that at FRI in Orlando. Oh, it's a script. No, it's not a script. It's a decision-making process and really a format that is standard, that allows people to go through the flow of everything and disseminate that information out to the folks that are coming in. So what is Size Up +3, and why do we want the company officers to practice that tactically as they're making their initial incident action plan?
Yeah, so the Size Up +3 is, they get there, and it's the first part of the strategic decision-making model. They evaluate the critical factors. What is the problem? And they go through that process. And if you want a full breakdown of that, we have a podcast, two back from this one, I think it is, that is just that, Size Up, and Size Up +3 is talked about in that. But I evaluate what the problem is, and then what am I going to do, and what am I going to do with the next 2 or 3 companies to support the incident action plan that I have communicated to everybody, right? So it's going through that company officer's head of, not just what am I going to do, but what do I need everybody else to do to solve the problem? Because they're in the best position to make that decision. When you're coming down the street 3 blocks away, and you're thinking, well, when I get there, this is just what I do. It's like, well, you don't have all the information, and you're not seeing what's going on, and the incident action plan is forever changing, right? Like, residential building fires in the U.S., 90-something% of them are solved with one well-placed single hand line, right? So the incident action plan, when engine 1 gets there, stretches a line, and the next engine's 2 minutes behind them, and they got water on the two rooms that are burning in this 2,000 square foot house. Well, your incident action plan is changing right now, right? I got water there, and that's setting the stage, and it would come out during the command transfer that, we have the fire knocked down, and in our system, like, what does that mean? I haven't checked for extension yet, but that puts that strategic IC in a different position too, as far as getting all clear. So I don't have to focus as much on that. I don't have fire control. They haven't checked for extension yet, but they got the fire knocked down. So I feel a whole lot better about where we're going to work and what we're going to do. And we're making it better for the building, for the firemen, for any victims inside. And my whole thought process of I still got to work on fire control is it gets lowered a little bit, right? Because this company has water on the fire, and they're starting to get that. And if they're not making progress, then in our system, that's where they're going to use the priority traffic piece of, we're not making progress. And if the strategic IC is not there, and engine 1, the incident commander at that point, needs other support, then they're going to change the incident action plan by communicating to one of those other companies what they need in that position, right? So when we're talking about all this, it seems like in the American Fire Service, we get our minds all wrapped around residential building fires and single family residential building fires, right? And that's why it's so important. I think that the strategic decision-making model and creating think environment is important in the process, because if you treat an apartment building like a house fire, it's not going to work either. And if I treat a fully protected, fireproof building like a house fire, it's not going to work. And if I treat Home Depot like a house fire, it's not going to work. And as Chris Stewart, every fire is different, right? I get there and it's boarded up, and there may be somebody in there. Yeah, we're still going to search, and we're still going to do all of that. But if I get there and Miss Smith stands in the front yard and says, my kid's in that window, that changes it, right? So we make decisions and deploy to solve the problem, not just, I don't want robots. I don't want somebody just getting there and just doing whatever some piece of paper says, or maybe even worse, whatever they want to do. We want to deploy to solve the problem.
So I think a couple things to support what Josh is saying is IAP plus 3 is not the same everywhere, right? What are the variables in that? The variables are the critical factors, the incident conditions, and what's critical going on right there in that moment on the Fireground. The other parts of it is, what are your resources, right? So you may be getting 3 engines and a ladder company, say, for your initial response, right? How are they staffed? How are they equipped? How are they trained? And at what time are they going to arrive? All of those things play into your plan. I can have very clear objectives. I need to get fire control, and I really want to get an all clear here. But I have to build my plan around the resources that I have coming and their abilities and capacities to actually do that work. And a lot of that is dependent on how many folks are going to show up on those rigs. So if I'm in an agency that is suburban or rural, and maybe I have 2, maybe I have 3 coming on those rigs, then my plan, I have the same objectives, but my plan of how I'm going to go about it's going to be a little bit different than if I'm showing it up in a metro fire department and the first 3 engines are showing up with 5 people, right? That's a very different capacity to actually do the work. So that has to be figured out inside your organization to be able to know and understand what IAP plus 3 is. So it's we can have the same objective, but there are things and variables that go into that may change and or drive our plan. The other thing is the incident plan, action plan is never stagnant. It is constantly and persistently should be revised. At the very least, it's evaluated. And that is through size up, that's through reevaluation of action, that's through meeting objectives on the Fireground. Those things cause the Fireground to evolve. Very few Firegrounds stay the same. They're either getting better or they're getting worse, right? And so that reevaluation process helps me decide, does the plan need to change based on those conditions or based on some other variable, or does the plan stay the same? No, we're in the right place, we're doing the right things are getting better, we are going to continue to push on with this plan. And so it is the idea to say that we show up and this is the plan in the beginning and this is what we're going to do no matter what. That is not that's not you build an increased potential for failure if that's the way we do it. So the system then allows for that a reevaluation part of it in adjusting and changing the plan based on the conditions, risk management, and strategy choices.
Chris, as you described, and we talk about this all over the place, with that, what's your real resource capability? What's on the apparatus? What is the apparatus capability? Is it a tower, a ladder, an engine? And what's its water capacity, foam? Any and all of that. But even in a single organization, that looks different. Mm-hmm. I mean, John at Clay, right? I mean, there was areas where probably 4 or 5 companies in 5 minutes, and there's areas where it's like, no, engine 23 or whoever, whatever that is, that outlying area, they're going to be by themselves for a minute, right? We just got some audio from a very large county fire department right here in Florida that I think they cover 600 square miles, and the first engine gets there. And they did a nice job, pulled off a rescue, put the fire out. First company officer was tasked, but had a system and was trained on the system. And that deployment model looked quite different than if they were in, more of their metro area, right? That this fire happened in, maybe a little bit more of a, I don't want to say rural, but an area where it's being developed, right? And the staffing was just different. And I'll take that a step further. The incident action plan has to change when your fire department is, the first emergency first like type organization, which is all over the country, right? Everybody isn't riding 5 or 4. It's looking more like 2 or 3. I mean, the last week at the conference, we heard a whole lot of that, right? Another very large Georgia metro county fire department. It blew me away when the guy told me, yeah, we ride 3. And he said, typically we end up having to put 2 engines together to make one attack team to make a stretch. And it was like, wow, you're like, that's Atlanta metro, very highly populated area. And he was like, no, that's just what we have, right? So with that said, with incident action planning and that deployment piece, you take 1 engine out, that changes your incident action plan potential. Who's normally second isn't second. They're 2 minutes. The next engine now is 2 minutes delayed. So what does that look like? And then everywhere that is doing that first emergency first, or I got 5 people in the station, but 2 of them are on the medic unit, or I have 4 people on the station, 2 of them are in the medic unit, and if all 4 of them are there, they all get on the fire truck, but all 4 or 5 of your stations are staffed like that, and you have 4 ambulances on the road, which that happens all the time. You can't talk about your staffing being, 16, and you're going to pull up in, 7 minutes with 16 people. You need to talk about your staffing being 7, and what does that look like? And now I'm going to have to pair up companies to create a whole company, right? And, we know it's not ideal. That's not what any of us want. We all want fully staffed. We know that capability is bigger, but that I think that number is 90+%. I would say 95% or more of the American Fire Service has less than 4 people. And 3 is a pretty close, I think, number. And we see it more and more and more that there's 2. And it's like, even metro cities, right? That they don't advertise that they have 2 people on it, but I think a fire department just in the top 10 largest fire departments in the country has some areas that are in some rural areas that have an engine in there that have 2 people there, right? And it's like several engines that have 2 people on it, and that fire department has well over 1,000 people on their fire department, and it's like, well, they do that because not as much happens out there or whatever, but that thought process is a little broke. But the company officer at that station has to think totally different than the person who's downtown and is like, engine 1, 2, 3, and ladder 7 are going to pull up at the same time, and battalion 1's pulling up at the same time, if everybody's in quarters, right? But 1 run changes that, and that's why it's so important to go back to the process and the thinking thing, and why we size up the factors and then base our deployment based off of what resources do we really have to solve the problem. There's very seldom does it look exactly the same. I mean, seems like our service is getting busier and busier with incidents because we keep on taking on more. So the availability of apparatus is, less and less.
So one thing that I think is important for ICs at whatever level is to recognize that having and knowing and understanding your incident action plan is one thing. Deploying companies is a totally separate thing. That's a deployment plan. That's taking the plan, and you have to have a plan in order to effectively deploy your companies. If you don't have a decent plan of how you're going to achieve all clear fire control and loss stopped, then you have a high likelihood of your deployment not being effective. So although we don't pause and narrate our incident action plan on the radio, right? That incident commander needs to have a very clear picture of what that is. And as they start to assign companies through task, location, and objective, they're now communicating those pieces of, hey, here's where I want you to go, here's what I want you to do, and these are the objectives I'm looking for you from that assignment. And that's the cue of, that's the information you're going to have to feed back to me when you finish it, or you can't finish it, or you need help, right? And so the plan is integral to that. So many places just assume, well, our incident action plan is our deployment, and that's ineffective. But we see they believe that that's okay because of accidental success. Well, we've done it before and it didn't prove to be a problem. So I want to make sure that we clearly delineate that fact. That was actually a big deal that I learned, growing up in the system with Bruno and the shift commanders that we had. Is no, you need to know and understand the differentiation of those two, and then. What are the standard elements of an incident action plan in the offensive strategy? And what are the standard elements of an incident action plan in the defensive strategy, right? So I'm going to do this stuff up on the front end of, sizing up and figuring out my critical factors, determining where am I on my risk, and and those things are going to define, all right, should we be in the hazard zone or should we be working from outside the hazard zone? That's strategy, right? And then so if we're working in the hazard zone, these are the typical standard critical elements of a plan to execute in the offensive strategy room inside the hazard zone. And then conversely, when those things line up and say, no, I need to be defensive here. Well, here are the standard elements of the defensive incident action plan. And they are not the same as an offensive incident action plan. And that's where we get into this idea of crews working in offensive positions during defensive fire conditions. The IC didn't clearly recognize the critical factors and select their strategy effectively, maybe, or they did, but the action and the incident action plan aren't aligning with that strategy, and that's creating big problems for us. We had a battalion chief from a larger county fire department describing to us a strategic level mayday of, no, we declared this fire defensive, but they were working up next to the building and the building fell on them and they spent 6 or 8 minutes digging them out. That's a problem. That was a strategic level mayday because the plan didn't match the conditions and strategy, right? So again, this is all system and process, and incident action plan by itself is not nearly as effective unless you describe how you come up with that plan and then how you reevaluate and either change or support that plan moving forward. So it's a critical element that we can't dilute. We need to know and understand what it is and then how we actually use it.
When it comes to that task, location, and objective, one of the things people just miss a lot is the objective. Why is it so important for us to verbalize and put it out there what the objective of that task and the location is as we're assigning it, or just stating it on an initial radio report that that's what we're going to do?
Yeah, so one, it tells everybody else where everybody's working, right? And then if I'm going to give somebody an assignment and I want them to go to a specific place and do a specific thing, then I want them to acknowledge that. And that's why we use the order model, right? And, the order model helps with that because they verify that they understand that assignment. And then as long as I give the assignment, I feel much better as an incident commander knowing that, okay, they're going to the second floor for primary search and fire control. And then if they confirm that they understand that, then that's what they're going to do. No different than Engine 7, I want you to lay a water supply to Tower 7, and if you're okay with the we got it, don't be surprised when Tower 7's like, we're still waiting on water. Command Engine 7, are you yeah, we got a water supply to ourselves, or whatever it is, right? And they missed the assignment. And then the objective piece, part of the objective piece is the reminder to the company of, this is what I want you to do, and then when you've completed that, I need to know that. Like, it's typically something that I want to know. So, in our system, that would come out as like status change, right? Like if they're getting fire control, or they got water on the fire, or they got an all clear of an area, because I'm tracking that, because that's going to impact my incident action plan, right? Like all of the parts and pieces tie together, and one is connected to the other. And any one piece by itself probably has some value, but you can't put all the puzzle together when you're missing one piece. And that's the beauty of having a system that everybody's using and is on the same page with.
Yeah, the objective part is the simplest way we have to pointing out to those companies, this is what you're responsible for. And it's simple. There's only 3 things. All clear, under control, lost, stop. Sometimes under control and lost stop, under control and all clear are coupled together. Hey, go to this place, get me an all clear, check for extension. All right, well, the officer needs to then figure out, okay, what's the most effective way to actually do that? And what tools do I need to actually accomplish that? So it's giving them that last piece of, hey, this is what you're responsible for, simplifying it, and then I want that back. And it's going to come back as a status change if they've completed it,
or they priority traffic, right?
Yeah, exactly. and if they can't, or they find something they didn't expect, or something that could drive a change, or they need assistance, then priority traffic, absolutely. So it's that objective becomes a critical piece of information for them. The other thing is, once I give them that task location objective, me as an IC, I've got to be disciplined enough to shut up unless I really have some legitimate, serious concern about what they're doing. And I don't want to hear from them until they've completed it or they can't complete it. And I am not going to bug them and badger them and have them narrate to me what they're actually doing, because you can micromanage that at very small fires and be successful and feel like you're a really good incident commander doing that. But once you get half a dozen or 8 or 10 companies doing the same thing, right? You can't micromanage all those. But you'll try, and you're horribly ineffective at it. So you don't do it to begin with. Give them that clear objective. Let them do the work. Let them come back to you, and that's when it calms the radio traffic down. So a clear plan and a well-communicated plan actually has a direct connection to improving, decreasing, and maximizing communication on the Fireground. And the question earlier is, why do we use radio communication to do all this? Is because we haven't mastered mind control yet, and we can't telepathically let the IC know. So it has to be done over the radio, but it's got to be way more disciplined.
So we do a command transfer. We've covered IC1, size up +3. We could talk about that all day. But before we wrap up, we need to talk about the command transfer, and then how that incident commander, and you explained this with a group recently, and I heard you say it, so hopefully you could say it the way you said it, because it just made so much sense to me. But you're either going to take the incident action plan that IC1 set up and say, yep, that's what we're going to continue, or IC2 changes course. So they have to be a part of that, because now they're coordinating what they see from the exterior with the CAN report from the inside. So let's address the transfer of command and the acceptance or change of that incident action plan.
Yeah, so to review, our standard process of the transfer of command is command communicating to IC1, making sure they're ready for the command transfer. The first thing I will go through is a unit rundown. I want to verify that I have the position of function of everybody on the Fireground quickly, very briefly, very efficiently. Once IC1 validates it or changes it or corrects me, then I'm going to say, okay, give me a CAN report. And then that's the opportunity. I have position and function down, accountability done. Now it's the opportunity for IC1 to give me an update on the conditions. And I guess the most important thing I want out of that is the needs part of it. I want the conditions and actions clearly, but then I need needs. All right, that's the forward-looking part, is what are we going to do? And then IC number 2 takes command, and they finish that off by verifying strategy and resource determination. So at that moment, the IC has a choice. There are really only two selections here: is based on the conditions, the information, the accountability or lack of. Am I going to continue with this incident action plan that IC number 1 set up, or through my evaluation, have the critical factors changed and or gotten worse, where we have to make a change in the incident action plan? That change can be very subtle. It can be, oh, okay, I need to reinforce some positions, or I need to assign a couple more companies to key tactical positions. Or it can be, oh, no, if this thing's gotten way worse, we're making a wholesale change and doing a 180, and we're going to go from the offensive to the defensive strategy, right? Those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum in the changes. But if things are going along smoothly, we're headed in the right direction, companies are where they need to be, we're seeing progress, we're getting good reports, I'm going to support that plan, that initial plan. I'm going to build on top of it, and then to a successful completion of the tactical objectives. And if not, then I'm going to make some adjustment, and I have a bunch of leeway here in what I can do in these adjustments. And so that is utilizing the system, clearly understanding maybe the initial plan and what the plan should be now, because it's changed from whenever the initial plan, the conditions have changed from whenever the initial plan was implemented. So I need to adjust it. I'm going to be fluid, and I'm going to measure these variables and figure out, is it right or is it isn't? And if it isn't, I'm going to fix it.
Yeah, so the very first thing, I guess, when that strategic IC is pulling up is, and it's an obvious thing in our system, but I just want to mention it, is if they're in the wrong strategy when you're pulling up, then you need to change that like right now.
Number one job.
So that's strategy has, the biggest impact. So, and it's possible, you're pulling up 7 minutes later, what it looks like now, what they described when they pulled up and they are in there working for 7 minutes and it don't look like they've made progress, we're going to change, we would change, right? And then that's not very often at all, but we would do that, right? We wouldn't even go through any other process probably. It would just be, this is not looking good, we're going to change strategies. And then the beauty of the system, and we have tons of examples of this during the command transfer, where that IC1 is giving IC2 the can report, the needs part, very specific on, my next assignment is I was going to have truck 7, who may be on deck already or level 1, they were going to do this. And it's like, oh, that's like the hug and the kiss of the system right there, right? It just like, okay, it's dialed in. Like everybody's on the same page. The incident commander's like, oh, wow, like it. Yeah, we're going. That's when you're going down that same path, right? IC1 had this. They know what needed to be done. They know who's there. What's the next assignment? What needs to happen? We kind of had that in a way with a recent audio thing from Cobb County where, what was Truck 17's assignment? I was going to have them do search, or I haven't assigned them, but I was going to have them do search, and the next assignment is, Truck 17, I want you to make sure you're getting all clear of that first, whatever. So that's everybody being on the same page, right? And then you're verifying position and function and all of that. And to circle back to, if you want to hear what some of this sounds like, listen to all of these live audio things that we put out from these working incidents. You want to know why we give... why we put an incident action plan out and why we communicate the way we do. Well, the Cobb County audio from late July, early August, a company keys up, we can get an all clear of this area, and another company's like, Engine 17, we already got an all clear of that. It's all clear, or Truck 17, or whoever it was. It don't matter who the company was, right? It's like, no, everybody's on the same page, and that's what kind of goes back to that duplication of effort thing, right? Well, I want to go do this. That's what I do. Well, it's already been done. So why do you really want to do that anyway? But they probably didn't know that it had been done. But in the system that company had, it was important that they say that, because it's like, why are we going to put them in there? Because everybody on that incident knew they were going down the path of, we're changing strategies here. We already got significant fire and we got a collapse. We're just waiting to get an all clear of these other spaces, and we're going, this thing's transitioning to defensive. And again, going back to it, that's the beauty of the system and everybody being on the same page, and why we communicate the incident action plan so that everybody on the Fireground is on the same page. There's no secrets.
Well, before we wrap up this part of the conversation and get to the timeless tactical truths, if you're watching this on video, you know that the buzz is pretty exciting here
Is
at
that what I
FRI.
just felt?
Yeah, that was the buzz.
Okay.
They're getting ready to open the doors here pretty soon, so we're going to get to a timeless tactical truth. But do you have any last thoughts on incident action plan? I know this is just a surface view, but we wanted to talk about why it is so important.
As your plan goes, so goes your safety and effectiveness on the Fireground. If you suck at coming up with plans because you don't take the time to actually size up, and you have no ability to measure risk, and you have no ability to define strategy, you have a chance that your plan will suck. And if that plan sucks bad enough, you will end up with bad things happening to your community or your firefighters on the Fireground, and we'll chalk that up to a predictable surprise, right? Anybody looking from the outside who knows and understands the process will go, oh no, I can tell you exactly what occurred there and why that was problematic, and everybody else can act like, oh, we had no idea that could have possibly happened. No, you actually can't pick it out.
Well, let's do a timeless tactical truth before we go.
Oh man.
Timeless Tactical Truth from Alan Brunacini. This is another volume 2. We've been hitting this lately. We're going to go back to volume 1 next week because that is now available at the Bee Shifter store for $10, I believe. It has been out of print for such a long time, but now you can get the book at beeshifter.com. I know we saw some of them on eBay going for big dollars. I've seen guys photocopying it and sharing it, so now you can actually get it for yourself. So last one from volume 2 for a period of time. This one says from AVB, certain street knowledge does not begin with information. It begins with experience and perception. But there is a dark and twisty road from experience and perception to correct action. And when we talk about the company officer, the chief, coming in and developing this IAP, blue card training is one of the very important elements of that, but there's some other important elements in being a good officer.
Yeah. Well, when I hear that, JV, I think of folks who take particular experience and action and they try to apply that everywhere. Right? It's now it becomes universal truth for everything in their own mind, and it's not. The only thing that's universal is the process, your evaluation of the process, or your utilization of the process really becomes your success. So that deep and dark place I think he's talking about becomes using that experience, whether it's accidental success or legitimate success, and applying it everywhere, and that doesn't work. You have to actually connect that too. And so, to your point, is utilizing the system, practicing the system as a part of the way you train keeps you out of that, right? Because then you start actually approaching every incident very independently, and I'm focused on the process, not my experience or what I want to do here. We're going to do actually what we need to do here.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of fact thing. Is you can get away with what you get away with until you don't get away with it, and that's that accidental success thing, right? So for 30 years, this is what I did, and it worked, and I never got caught, right? And that doesn't mean that it was right. And I'll make it the simplest thing possible. I never wear my seatbelt. Well, you never wore your seatbelt until that day, and you didn't have it on, and you got caught, right? And whatever happened to you happened to you. Well, that's kind of that. Like your experience matters, but when you look at it big picture, if you're getting away with what you're doing because of that experience, that doesn't make it right. So it kind of comes back to a line of you better be doing everything right when something goes wrong. And what does that look like? And I think in the system, that means you're using the system, and you're actually diagnosing the problem, and you're taking action based off of what you have and what you can do, what you have the capability of doing. And we hear it all the time. When you're a fireman, we were just talking about this recently, and I think Nick and Terry and Pat were just talking about it as well. when you're a fireman, you have a totally different perspective than when I'm a lieutenant. And when I'm a lieutenant, I have a different perspective than the captain, and the captain, then the battalion chief, and the operations chief, and the fire chief, right? So I have the opportunity, and I'm thankful for it, to talk to so many people all across the country on a very regular basis that are making transitions to our system or trying to figure our system out, or, you know, we're not doing that system because we don't like it, but I do want to talk to you about it because what does it do? And, you know, oftentimes they were in a battalion chief's role and they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. And I got like 5 cases in the last year where people were promoted from battalion chief to operations chief, and they're like, yeah, how fast can we start this? Because I had no idea that the companies outside of my battalion were doing what they were doing or not doing what they were doing, right? And it kind of comes back to that experience thing. Their street credibility, that person's street credibility when they were a fireman, company officer, battalion, in a battalion or in a area, they saw that. They maybe didn't see what was going on everywhere else. And then they get to this other position and they're looking at it from 30,000 feet and they're like, I own all of this and I'm responsible for it, and we're going to do something different because we are all over the place. And I mean, a very good friend of mine at a large metro city, you know, made that transition 4 or 5 years ago and was totally against it. SOP driven his entire career, worked in the same district, didn't have, you know, exposure to everybody. He knew everybody, whatever, but didn't have becomes the ops chief, and it was like, no, how have we gotten away with what we've gotten away with? So,
well, and I think firefighters have this perception of chiefs and maybe even their company officers that, well, why do we have to do it this way? And you know, because when you're 25 and you're 2 years into the job, your perception and your experience level, even though you might be a very smart person, is way different, as well as your responsibility level. When you're the company officer, now you're responsible for the company. When you become a battalion chief, now you're responsible for everybody inside the hazard zone. When you're the ops chief, you're responsible for everybody on the fire department. So that's how those decisions are made. And you know, you don't get it until you get it. I mean, once you land in that seat, then your eyes open up and you realize, like, well, now it's different. And that's when we see people make that change.
yeah.
Well, Josh Bloom, Chris Stewart, thanks so much for hanging out. We've had a great week. Again, this is a week removed from Fire Rescue International in Orlando, but that's where we're recording this right now. I want to ask you to do me a favor. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe our podcast. If you subscribe, you get it in your inbox every week, and you don't miss one of them. So we want you to be able to continue to support the V-Shifter podcast that way. Until next week, thanks so much for listening. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, John.
See ya.